Hey guys, welcome back to the show. Hope you're all doing really well. We've got a story that I don't even know today, so
No, you don't.
we're just going to share with it. I can't even speak this morning. It's one of those mornings. So before we dive into it, let's just hit that like, please. I really appreciate it. Subscribe and do all those awesome things because we really appreciate it. And it doesn't cost you anything. It literally costs you nothing to hit like, and just if you get any value out of it, even if it's just like, oh, what, all these guys idiots, hit the like in it or hit the dislike, whatever, it doesn't matter. So Will, what is the story that you're about to not only share with me for the first time but with the audience?
I think this is going to be an interesting one. I found it this morning whilst I was scrolling. I sit in bed and wake up to the world most mornings. And I found this story whilst scrolling then. And it's an interesting one because it's obviously topical on AI. It's topical on the state, which I know is something we like to discuss. So it sort of merges everything together. And it'd be great to get your thoughts.
I don't like talking about the state. That irritates me.
Maybe in the UK. But I don't think California is any different. And this is the story of the day. California becomes the first state in the US, in case you didn't know where California is, to regulate AI companion chatbots. And the article reads, California Governor Gavin Newsom signed a landmark bill on Monday that regulates AI companion chatbots, making it the first state in the nation to require chatbot operators to implement safety protocols for their AI companions. The new law, SB 243, is designed to protect children and vulnerable users from some of the harms associated with the AI companion chatbot use. It holds companies from big labs like Meta and OpenAI to more focused companion startups like Character.ai and Replica, legally accountable if their chatbots have failed to meet the new law's standards. And it's coming off the back of a few little bit of like headlines really of deaths of kids. Adam Rain was one in that went quite viral, who died by suicide after allegedly a long series of conversations with OpenAI's ChatGPT that apparently encouraged it. And there's also been more families suing OpenAI. Character.ai is another one, after finding these conversations with kids. And this is going in. This is going in January 1st, 2026, and it requires companies to implement certain features such as age verification and warnings regarding social media and companion chatbots. The law also implements stronger penalties for those who profit from illegal deepfakes, including a $250,000 per offense charge. So, the crux of it is we're starting to see AI regulation coming in, starting with California at this point, where it's going to require ID verification. It's going to require crackdowns on users to allegedly, and this is always a key thing for me, protect the children. But it's interesting because right up until now, AI has been fairly unregulated. You could just do whatever you would like, and no doubt at all that it won't stop with California. It won't even stop with America, and it will come this side into Europe because it already is. It's being talked about quite heavily within the European courts. And yeah, it's an interesting topic to talk about. What's your initial reaction, Ben, when you hear some of those things?
My initial reaction was, wow, this is heavy at 9 o'clock in the morning.
Well, you know me.
Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? I think we were there. I was like, oh yeah. I thought this was going to be a fun one. This is like heavy.
No, it's not fun. It's not fun. It requires you to do critical thinking.
Jeez, I mean, so right, it's obviously absolutely devastating when you hear these sort of stories, of suicide and these awful sort of experiences that the families and the individuals are going through and have to go through and all the rest of it. I can't help but feel sometimes is AI just, we're just blaming it for maybe there were some sort of issues, underlying issues already. That might be an unfair statement for particular instances. So I'm I don't mean it that way, but my point is, there's always, in America particularly, there's that whole argument about, gun control, for example, and that and guns. Some argue that guns should be banned, and some believe obviously it's absolutely part of their fundamental constitutional rights, and that guns aren't the problem; it's the person pulling the trigger that are the problem. So I get both sides, and there probably needs to be a sensible middle ground approach, but obviously there are extremes at both sides of the camp, and it sort of feels maybe a little bit like that. Having said that, I do think, as much as I hate state intervention, as I much want states not to be involved in my life at all, and for us to be treated as adults, I think that there sometimes is a place for certain sort of, guidelines that we want to live by, parameters, and we can hopefully, be left to live within those parameters. And I guess that's where I sit. I'm not like, I don't want any say, nothing at all. I think we need a wider berth, if that makes sense, that we're able to move within, rather than it being very tightly constrained in terms of what the rules and regulations of the society are. And I feel, that it sounds like there are certain sensible parts to this, like, warnings. Because again, you can't, just as you can't control a crazy person getting hold of a gun, I mean, you can obviously put things in place to try and prevent that, but ultimately if a crazy person wants to get a gun, they'll find a way of getting a gun. And I guess it's a similar sort of approach, as you want to sort of try and put those mechanisms in place to at least try. It's not going to prevent it. If somebody wants to do something, they'll do it. Yeah. But it's trying to do what's probably a reasonable approach. But you're not going to catch. You can't catch all and stop all of these sort of awful events, and that's just the reality. Unless you ban it outright, which no one wants to do. So, but the flip side, of course, is these reasons governments often give for controls, for oversight, are sometimes Trojan horses. So I'm acutely aware of that and very skeptical of that as well. And I think that's an important part for all of us, to have that analytical and skeptical and questioning mind, and not just going blindly in saying, yes, that's a good idea, yes, I'll just follow my leader, you must be right because, I don't know, you're on CNBC or whatever it is, and just not being a monkey and just following, or a sheep and following the crowd. It's like actually having some sort of independent thought. So that's my initial reaction. I guess. Well, how about you? How are you thinking about it?
No, I think it's a very sensible reaction. I have a few thoughts on it. I don't ever have necessarily a problem with government regulation, especially ones like this, where on the surface they are purporting to want to protect the children from harm. Of course, everyone wants to do that, so I have absolutely no problem with that. What I will also always have questions is how they're planning about going to do that. I haven't read the law, I haven't read what's passing. I've obviously only seen a TechCrunch article, so I'm in the dark, so I'm stabbing blindly here. So if you know more details, obviously drop it.
Actually, this is a really important point, because often it'll be sold as a headline to public opinion, and often the detail is within the legislation.
Yes, exactly.
And very few people actually read the detail or question it. I mean, obviously, like in the UK, we have parliamentary debates and things like that, and obviously,
but people don't really read the results of those either.
No. And does every MP or every Senate member, I'm not sure what they call it in America, is it Senate member or whatever you call them? Yeah, and apologise, because I know we're getting a big audience in America, so thank you for watching. So put in the comments to help alleviate my naivety. They must have all these laws that are coming through all the time, are they reading every single line? So again, it's the detail. It's what is going into this legislation. You know, are there sort of parts which maybe, you know, maybe not as it's perceived.
Exactly. There's that. There's hidden clauses, if you like. The second thing within that legislation is they're going to be checking things like IDs. I'm always skeptical of that. How are they going to do that? How is that information stored? How is that information used? That's a big question. Then there is the question of how flexible is this law to overreaching beyond what its initial remit was, because a lot of legislation starts off, again, fairly sensible, but what happens is it has a lot of flexibility to then gateway to other legislative legislation that causes problems, you know, in the future, that does overreach privacy concerns, that does overreach heavy penalties on things. So that would be the next question for something like this. The third question, always around child protection laws, is I don't know the answer, it's something that I debate with, is how much of this should be on the parents' responsibility to guardian and protect and look after and educate
100%.
their children
100%.
over and above government mandated protection.
100%.
I think there is a sensible middle ground, of course, and I'm not a parent, so I can't necessarily speak. But I would, if I think about it, I would prefer, at this stage in my life, as I think about becoming a parent and things like that, is I would prefer to have that responsibility on me to ensure my child is protected, my child is well educated, well brought up. And I know there's always risks. And the last point to this, which I would always question, is how does this stifle technology growth? The moment you start putting legislation on preventing this compliance, oversight, regulation, technology slows down, development slows down because there's more hurdles. The barrier to entries are greater. The risks, if you do mess it up, are greater. So it just prevents people from getting into it. It monopolizes things because only certain big companies will be able to afford to do regulatory oversight. And that's another big question. In such an advancing space that could be so fundamentally game-changing for the human race, and already is, it'd be a shame to put a roadblock on that through legislation that gets it wrong. That's again another key question. Is I'm not particularly attacking this law that's passed because I don't know the contents of it other than what it states to do on the face of it. But that's what I'm always wary about.
No, definitely. Will, the two things that jump out at me is firstly nanny state, which again is I'm not going to repeat really what you said, but the point being, we need to take responsibility of our own families, our own children, and what we teach them, and not offset that to a school, a nursery. I was hearing some ridiculous story the other day in the UK. Something like 1 in 6 kids are potty trained when they go to nursery for the first time. It's absolutely ridiculous. And then how much time is wasted by those people dealing with that situation rather than helping teach the kids. It's a real abdication of responsibility as a parent that we're going, the state is just going to look after me from cradle to grave. It's pathetic. So I think everyone needs to get a grip and actually take personal responsibility. The second point, which suddenly jumps out at me, Will, which we've talked about many times, is privacy.
Yeah, massively. Yeah.
This, the question has to be asked is, well, if there's going to be some compliance within what's said, who's doing what, the conversations, clearly your conversations are going to be recorded.
Yeah.
So if you're using these sort of platforms, ChatGPT, Gemini, whatever, that you have no doubt that everything you put in there will be recorded, and if need be, will be subject to a subpoena, and it'd be read out in a court of law or whatever it is, or a civil court or whatever it is not private. And I think that again is massive. Because if they're making this sort of legislation, they're going to say, well, we need to see what was said.
Exactly.
So is this another backdoor to snooping, to not just, oversight in terms of your, when messages came along, suddenly messages were, backdoors for messages. Then obviously we had the rise of WhatsApp, we had the rise of Telegram, we had the rise of Signal because they wanted encryption and privacy, which is so important. And I think that's absolutely fundamental for us, for a healthy civilization. We should be able to talk freely without somebody looking over your shoulder. Are you saying the right things? We're not living in 1984, with some sort of, crazy sci-fi world, or living in China. We live in a freedom-centric world. Well, we do. Not everywhere in the world does, of course, which is unfortunate. And I think if we care about the way our world is, then we should fight for it. Because clearly privacy is under attack in many ways.
Yes, no, absolutely. I'm as you know, as we've spoken about, I'm very big on privacy, and some of these legislations and these laws passing can be direct threats to it. So it's important that you look, and you don't just accept it at face value, and you do look at what the law contains and how they're planning to go about doing things. And if they don't state it, you need to ask, and the public need to put pressure on lawmakers to make sure that they're creating fair, equitable laws for both parties, for companies that they're trying to put oversight on, as well as the consumers that they're trying to protect, because it can quite easily be done wrong, and it can quite easily be a gateway, as I said, to further more draconian laws that weren't initially mentioned, but because you've accepted this one, now you can accept this. Now it's like an easier step to do that, so
it's the game they play. It's the game that's played.
And that's my thought on it, really. I'm all up for legislation. I'm all up for some protections, as long as they're done properly and as long as they're done in the interest of the consumer and the company that they're both protecting. And I think you should also be highly skeptical and question it as well, because this could, if done wrong, stifle privacy for people, stifle protections for people, and also stifle the development of the technology as well, which is something which I would hate to see. Just
to finish on a positive note, Will, because I know this, and apologies for the audience if this sounds a bit doom and gloom, because I'm really not a doom and gloom person. I'm quite a positive person, as are you, Will.
You are,
but it's hard to sometimes. When you, I guess when you've taken is it the blue pill or the red pill? Let me know in the comments, guys. But you've seen The Matrix. When your eyes have been opened, I think, it's an awakening moment. And of course, lots of people probably, think I'm crazy, including my own family, I'm sure. But I think one positive point I'd just like to make before we wrap it up is,
for sure,
are companies like Midnight, who are doing zero knowledge proofs, which hopefully will solve some of these concerns that we have.
I agree.
And, that can sort of maintain our privacy without disclosing everything that was said. And a classic example is you go to a bar and a bouncer says, I want to check that you're over 18 or over 21 in America.
Yeah.
And of course, with your ID, you're actually giving a lot more information than, just you're over the age that you need to be. Because ultimately, they don't need to know the day you were born, the year you were born, or the month you were born. They just need to know that you are over that age. They don't need to know your name, your first name. They don't need to know your surname. They don't need to know your address. They just need to know you are old enough to go into that bar. And that's what sort of Midnight are trying to tackle. So that's a really positive, future. So, when these sort of legislations and compliance requirements come in, there's a way to still maintain privacy. So that's really interesting, and that's something that we're mindful of and looking at as well. So that's 100%. Quite exciting.
100%.
Well, let's wrap it up. Cool. All right. Well, listen, guys, I hope that wasn't too heavy. Probably was. Maybe let us know what you thought in the comments. Maybe we're completely wrong. Maybe we're completely mad. Either way, say hi. And until the next time, we'll love you and leave you, and catch you on the next one. Take care for now.
Cheers, guys.